Well, good morning, folks. It's getting time for another video. See, I've had some bamboo delivered. That's what I'm going to be using to make my racks. Also, I had some of my trays delivered. Chicken coop is still doing okay. Had some more plants delivered out. Keeps me busy. Garden plants are doing pretty good. I can't complain considering it's all new soil being put in here and we're so close to the sea. It's kind of fun trying to figure out how to stay ahead of it, but it's doing well. We're not losing any plants to the salt. We're actually losing them to the bugs that are here. There's a little booger that comes up out at night and it really likes chewing on the stalks. We lost a couple of our vines. Everything else is doing pretty good. There's nothing that can't be replanted. And going back on the concrete work now, it's doing pretty good. Plus, started getting my trays delivered. There'll be a total of 100 of these. That's what the bamboo's for. I got to start making racks. There'll be 5 of them in a rack. The trays are 2 foot wide, 8 foot long, 6-inch high sides. You can see here, made out of 3/8 marine plywood. Very strong and durable. It should be able to handle the weight of the water that's in here. The egg crate will sit inside these right here, and there'll be a spacer of PVC that will be laid on the bottom, and the egg crate will sit directly on top of it, so it leaves a space underneath it, I would say about 4 inches. And then air line will be run through here, and then there'll be air stones spaced out evenly across the length of the inside. And then water will come in from one end. I'll use some water jets. Basically, the water jet is just nothing more than a PVC with holes drilled on one side so that it causes a spray. There'll be 3 of them. Let me see if I can back up here. Here, I'll use one of these trays over here that are painted, laying down. Water would come in on one side, and there'd be a jet right there. And then there'd be another jet here, and another one right along here. And like I said, it's a PVC pipe with fine holes drilled in a line on each side of it all the way across. And the purpose of it is that it gives a spray. And that spray is enough to disperse the air bubbles coming up from the air stones. The reason why is because if you don't, all the air will go into just a few sections wherever there's an air stone. The jet distributes and disperses those bubbles and spreads it out wide over the whole surface of the bottom so that it keeps everything aerated and it keeps the water in a nice circulation, because these egg crates, when they set down, will have a net bottom. They'll be like individual 2 by 2 inch pots. And a lobster stage 4 fingerling will stay in each one of those trays. Now these trays, if you use the standard size egg crate in here, then this 2 foot by 8 foot tray will wind up having 12 rows, and then 48 rows. So I think I figured it out. I believe it will hold 560 individuals per tray. There'll be a total of 100 trays. So the facility since I'm only going to stack them 5 high and not 6 high, will hold about 57,600 total lobsters in these 20 racks. Now there'll be a total of 20 racks, 5 trays in each rack, and then they're in the process of painting them now. We're putting 1 coat of epoxy paint on the outside, bottom, and the inside, and then there'll be a second coat that will be applied on the inside. So these should get several years worth of use out of them, even though they're just made out of a lower grade 3/8 instead of a 1/2 inch plywood. The reason why we decided to go with this is because, one, it's sturdy enough to handle the weight of the water, which would be about 550 pounds of water in each tray. But at the same time, the 1/2 inch plywood here runs over 2,000 pesos. 3/8 plywood per sheet only runs about 850 pesos. So it's well under half price. So we decided to go with it because when you're talking 100, you get basically 1 tray out of a sheet. So you're talking 100 sheets at over 2,000 pesos a piece, or 100 sheets for only 850 pesos. It saves up some bucks. And it will function just the same. Later, once I get some crops out of here, these trays will be replaced with fiberglass trays anyway, and the bamboo is just strictly to hold it for a few cycles, and then once we get everything ranged and we get start making the fiberglass trays, then for their replacement, then I'll make really heavy-duty metal racks at the same time. It's always good to let the profits off of the facility build the fancy equipment. When you can improvise and you can still get something that will function and you can get a couple, 2 or 3 years out of it for a fraction of the cost, go with it. Save the money. We started working again. The tank's now coming back up. You can see that it's now in the process of having the wooden form at the top. So we pour a 6-inch solid concrete ring around the top of it. The drain lines have all been put in place. These 2 tanks here, as I explained before, these are my water reserve. And this one over here is my secondary working tank. They're 6 foot tall. Once the ring's poured over the top of it, they'll be over 6 foot tall. And they're 5 foot wide and 10 foot long. So they'll hold quite a bit of weight and water inside of them. The lobster tanks the insides have been lined on them and now just coming out, and they have to do a re-level of the top, getting it ready, because there will be tile laid on the top surface and all the inside walls as well as the bottom. And I explained in the last video the reason for using the ceramic tile was to minimize the exposure of salt water to the sides of the concrete, because the salt water pH changes drastically. It gets really erratic. So by lining it by tile, I'll be able to keep a consistent pH in here, and I don't have to fight it. 3 things that lobster larvae are very susceptible to shock and death because of their delicate state. They need a consistent consistency as far as the temperature, pH levels, and water solidity. So by lining these, it eliminates a big problem, simplifies life a lot better. Plus, when it comes time in between crops, I will drain these completely out, and having the tile inner linings also makes them a lot easier to clean and sterilize before putting water in them for the next cycle. By doing that, it will help minimize any chances of a disease getting started inside my tanks or anything carrying over from the previous crop. The whole intent of this is that the whole environment be sterile. Almost have to look at this almost like a hospital. Keep everything sterile, keep it clean, and you don't spread germs to new patients. Basically, when you're knocking these things out and filling these trays and you're in cycle, taking a couple of days in between and washing and cleaning this out is all that it would take to salvage an issue where you would have disease carry over and wipe out your whole total crop. So these are designed, the whole system's designed to be steadily being able to take quickly offline, scrubbed, washed, and brought back online again. By doing that, I won't experience some of the issues that a lot of the other facilities encounter because they get a disease in there and it runs rampant. And then if they do another crop afterwards, they find that they get cross-contamination of crop. I don't want that. It won't happen in this facility. I'll do everything to my best ability to ensure that doesn't happen. Now we're fixing, as you see in here, the floor now is starting to be graded out a little bit. We'll re-level all this back out again. Up over in there, I still have 3 more tanks that I have to put in, like I explained in the last video. They're 8 foot by 8 foot, 7 by 7 foot, and 8 foot by 8 foot, and this is where my food production will go. I'll be raising shrimp, brine shrimp, copepods, and algae, as well as rotifers. And those will be used in various mixes and combinations to feed my larvae pots, which will be along the wall over here. There'll be a total of 15 of them. And they'll also be mixed with live fish, or not live fish, but fresh fish, milled into a fine mill. And then I'll make fresh sticky tablets. And then those sticky tablets is what will be used to feed all the stage 4s that are inside the trays here that line in. Like I said, there'll be 20 trays. There'll be 10 in a row, 5 stack high, for a total of 20 trays inside here. Once they're done in this tray, then they get taken out to the pond, which is right back in behind the facility. And there'll be floating net cages that are sitting over there. Once they mature out, and the ones that don't get sold, those will in turn be transferred from the saltwater pond out to larger floating net platforms that are out in deeper water, and then we'll grow them out there. And so they'll sell at the various sizes. Once they come out of here and they go, once they reach the nets is where they're actually finished out to where they're ready for market. The inside of this facility is just strictly to put as many into the nets as possible. So what's in here won't actually be sold directly to market. It will still have to spend a little bit of time in the nets to finish growing out and getting, I don't really want to start selling them till they go into latent 5, early 6 stage. And then after that, they can go all the way up to market size. Market size over here right now, prices range from the buyer at about $2,200 to $2,300 per kilo. An average lobster market size is really half a kilo or 1 pound. You figure that if you get it to market, each lobster that you successfully get through here and get into the nets and raised to maturity, which would take about 14 months from the time they come out of here to the point that they're ready for sale. Each one of them, you can bring a sales price of about 1,100 pesos, or you might as well say what would be equivalent to about $25. outrageous. It's why I don't eat lobster myself. But everything here is coming on nicely. I really can't complain. We were down for about a week. I had a couple of issues. One of the issues was that we literally ran out of concrete, and then we were in a period of a drought. Like I said in the last video, it would change. It changed because of about 3 days this week, it did nothing but rain. We were down to a half a barrel of water. The first day of the rain, we filled all 9 of our 55-gallon drums, rain barrels. And once I get my downspouts all connected into rain barrels, there'll never be an issue again, because this roof surface will collect a lot of water. And so we'll have 4 stage areas where we'll actually have racks of barrels all connected in series that will tie into the guttering system. So even in a little mild rain, we'll get water into it. A heavy rain, we can fill ourselves to capacity pretty quick, because we have to use the rainwater to right now to mix the concretes, but we also need it for the gardens and wash and cleaning and stuff like that. There is no water well here. The reason being is the ground is a very hard shell coral. It's almost impossible to drop a well in here, not one that can be done by hand. You'll see where they use these lighter systems where you can screw them in. Now, you'd have to bring in a large professional drilling rig to be able to get down to it. So you can't afford to be hitting dry holes. And as I show you here, because there's nobody out here right now, we are right about at high tide. And you can see here the water table. The salt water still comes up underneath, under the ground, solidification. And there are times, especially when it's a really high tide cycle and the full moon, that actually water will seep up through the ground. That's the reason for these raised beds. The salt water will actually come up, and there'll actually be a little pond pooling right along in here and on the outside of this fence. I've seen it with water in there a couple of inches thick. But as soon as the tide starts going out, it dissipates back through solidification, and out it goes. So you have to boat in all the water, which during a little drought period like we were having is really a pain, because everybody's tapping off of a few wells here, and they literally wind up being standing room only, and only a couple of days a week they turn on, because they have to protect the integrity of their wells. You overdo a well and you can wipe out the walls of a well, it will collapse. So it's been kind of a fight for a couple of months to stay ahead of the water cycle. But now that the rain started again, it won't be an issue. Surigao City is one of the wetter regions in the Philippines. It gets an annual rain rate of about 144 inches. There's actually 244 rain days here generally, of some type of rain. So when we have a drought, it's really only for about 6 weeks or 8 weeks. But even during the drought, if everything's set up right, as a rule, it still will get about a half an inch a week. But when you're like this, and it's droughted and the ground's really dry, a half inch hits here and it's gone. You don't really get much in the way of runoff. So we have, that's another reason for the NEPA roof inside, like we did it, was for 2 reasons. One, it will protect the concrete walls will protect the roof, because being this close to the water, when the wind picks up, the water can come, or excuse me, the airflow through here, the wind can be pretty strong, and it literally just ripped the NEPA off the top of this during a heavy tropical storm. Being recessed into and sitting on the second floor of this 2-floor level, it helps protect the NEPA a lot better from the high wind that we can get through here sometime. Plus, we put the inside gutterings down inside. We can capture all that water and put it in 4 locations. And we can use that water then to water all the gardens, which will be here, all the plants, orchids, and so forth. And we won't be dependent on having to run and get water, because even getting 55-gallon drums, it's very difficult to get 55-gallon drums full of water in and out. You literally have to come here, put a pump in them, and then pump them from barrel to barrel and hopscotch the barrels up. So it can be an all-day task just getting 9 barrels of water in here, not including the labor and the expense. If you go with the 55-gallon drum, or the little 5-gallon drums, it takes 11 of them to fill a regular 55-gallon drum. So you doing 9, you're making at least a couple of trips in the boat. But when you're having to stand in long lines to get water, that winds up being a task that spreads out over days. So the catching and capturing the rainwater will resolve that issue, because we won't encounter what we encountered when we first got here. We'll be ahead of that curve. But all in all, I'm pleased with everything. I can show you here what our view is. As I explained before, on the outside of here and the other video, I will eventually have floating platforms that will have between 12 and 14 nets in each one, and we will eventually line the outer perimeter of the facility on this outside with floating cages once we're really into full production here. And in this side over here, we will turn it into a sanctuary and rope it off, and it will be a no fishing zone. Let me come over here. I can show you just how clean the water is here. It is absolutely sparkle. Clean water. Get it in a good fresh cycle. I was in the other one, I mentioned that we are actually, this area over in here is actually the northernmost point of Mindanao. Everything from Mindanao at this point is all south of us. Surigao Island is back that way, about a 2.5-hour boat ride. Dinagat Island is right over that way, about an hour boat ride. This water that comes through the inlet, this is actually the head of the water feed for the Surigao Straits, which run right past Surigao City and run all the way in. It picks up the main water from there, either goes south on the east side, or west side of Mindanao, and also goes over to the other, works its way up into the other island chain. Cebu and Bohol are back off that way quite a bit. Manila is back up in that direction that way. So the water that when it comes in here, it actually comes from off the Pacific through the Philippine Sea, comes directly inside here. It's fresh. There's no really any major townships or cities north of us. So when the water comes in here, it's clean and unpolluted. Runs a good cycle. There's always a good flow through here. Fisher buddies. Good folks here. It's a good culture. They cover each other's back. When you got thousands or hundreds of thousands of pesos in your nets at any given time, you have to be dependent on your neighbor to cover your back, because it's an awful tempting thing for people with no conscience, they can look at these lobster nets as an easy target. They'll come up at night, swim up at night and cut your nets. They'll steal a few that they can carry with them, but then the lobsters find the hole. So they might steal 10 or 15 of them, and then 50 or 60 go out, and they can absolutely devastate a lobster grower because he's spending a lot of time and effort raising them and growing them out for just somebody to come in here and butcher his nets. You can see here, I was telling you about the solidification that occurs. You can see how the water comes up in here in stages. I don't ever show this side of the facility. This is the back side of it. We had a CR inside the facility. I took it out for health reasons. I don't want a CR inside, especially when I live right behind it. I can use my own CR. So we had the CR built over here, and this was primarily so that the people that are attending to these bungalows can do it later when these bungalows are gone. Then I'll use it for our own use here. And you can see, I was telling you about using a tidal generator. I'll explain that since I'm back here. You can see it good. You can see how close we are to the water over there. And there's a very little distance between the edge of that water and the beginning of the saltwater pond, which is right here. It runs behind. I can show you some more of the tidal solidification. You can see the water that's standing over there inside. It'll go almost to the back of the facility. Another couple of 2 or 3 hours, all this water will go because as the tide begins to start coming down. There are actually three concrete gates. I was thinking there was only two. There's actually three. The closest one is right here. The advantage to this is, you can see here, I'll walk around, you can see it here, there's a small concrete gate right there. Well, this used to actually come all the way across and attach over to the ocean. But storms and stuff have filled this back in because you get a good tropical storm come through here, it can push sand from off the bottom over there and bring it and build it back up. So what I will do is I will dig a trench that will run back down through here and tie it back to the ocean over there. I can line the inside of that trench with concrete or hollow block and just keep it maintained steadily, keep it scraped out, and keep my opening clear. And I can put a series of paddle wheels down through here. And those paddle wheels, I can put a generator or an alternator off of them. And as the tide flows in and as the tide flows out, I can do two directional. And I can utilize the water as it's flowing through and out of the pond section that's over here. And I can do that in all three gates. And those, in turn, I have very short wire feed going from them to the back of the facility right here. So I won't lose a lot of electric through them. So I can use tide generators, what I call tidal generators here. And then at the same time, I can place around the pond area and around the outer perimeter and along in here, I can make wind generators. So I could set as many as 25 to 50 wind generators all the way around this facility here as well, plus a couple of solar arrays. So I should be able to generate a lot of consistent charging capacity for a rather large battery bank, which I'll keep outside the facility so that it's well ventilated. I don't want the battery bank on the inside because fumes can build up. It can be detrimental to our health. I don't know if it would somehow affect the lobsters in the cage. I don't want to mess with it. It's better for me to come out here, build an outbuilding, and keep all my battery array, or all my battery, my battery array out here, and then just wire it directly in, put power panels on the outside, power panels on the inside, and then run everything there. So the topography here is really, really perfect for what I'm wanting to do. I've got a good flow here. Now there's another advantage with here. Unlike being up against, say, across where you've got the large mass, during a rain cycle, the freshwater runoff coming down onto the land really pushes the water, the freshwater acts, the water starts getting brackish, and it will really push out. And it takes time for that water to dissipate and for the salt water to regain back where it is. But during that time, there's a major swing in pH. There's a major swing in solidification, salt level. My tongue's tied right now. Long night and early morning rise. So when it does rain, if you're dependent on the water out here for your recycling, like a lot of facilities will set themselves up, when the water goes brackish, you can't shut your pumps down. You have to cycle in that water, and they get lost because of that. That's why I'm going to have that large tank inside, because when the water is beautiful and clear and it's pristine and it's consistent, I can turn around and put a pump out here, easily pump it inside my building, fill my tank, and then I can use that tank to top off my drainage that I drain off the other tank, because you have to drain a certain amount of it to be able to maintain and keep your ammonia levels down. When you're in a tight facility like this and you're doing feeds and you have that many larvae growing, you're going to get a lot of expended proteins. That protein, in turn, even though it's picked up in the protein skimmers and the salt filters, it will begin to start decomposing, and it will alter the pH and also seriously raise the ammonia. So you have to bleed off your water and then re-supplement that water that you're draining off. By having the two tank system side by side like I'm doing inside, my secondary working tank and my primary storage tank, I can easily just drain the secondary working tank to the level I need, still keep my water in cycle, then I can introduce the fresh salt water directly into it. Since it's sitting here and being cycled inside here, it's at the same water solidity, it's at the same pH, and at the same water temperature is what I'll be introducing it into. So there'll be no change or effect that will occur to my lobster larvae in any of their stages. So if we're in a period of a high rain, I can strictly work off my reserve over here. Then as soon as the rain breaks, the water has had time to clean out, and the brackish water dissipates and it becomes pure salt water again, then I can come out here and I can just retop my tank. So getting fresh water here was one of the keys that made me decide that, and the saltwater pond back in the back, and the distances are very short that I'd have to transfer my stock from one stage to another stage through the cycle. So it works out really, really well. My worker, here comes my carpenter. All right, well, like I said, I've talked your ear off for a while, kind of explained things, showed you a little bit more, and like I always say, until I see you again, y'all have a good one now.